Buon pomeriggio a tutti. Allora, anche quest'anno siamo arrivati all'evento finale. Per me e per Giuseppe e Jurman è davvero sempre una grande emozione e un grande onore arrivare a questo momento. Abbiamo lavorato fianco a fianco, guardo voi là in fondo, quindi guardo voi partecipanti, guardo i tutor che ci hanno dato una mano e avete messo tutti tutto, quindi grande entusiasmo e soprattutto grande voglia di imparare. E io e Giuseppe crediamo molto nel valore di questo progetto, di questa scuola estiva che è WebValley dal 2001 e impariamo tutti portiamo a casa qualcosa ogni anno, partecipanti e tutor. Impariamo insieme e ci ricordiamo cosa vuol dire fare ricerca, cosa significa farlo con impegno, con rigore. Contiamo sulle competenze di ciascuno di noi, ma anche su un lavoro di squadra, quindi cosa vuol dire lavorare in un team e in un team interdisciplinare, dove ognuno ci mette un pezzettino. E il modello organizzativo di WebValley da ormai qualche anno è per noi una certezza, grazie alla collaborazione con l'Istituto Artigianelli, che ospita sia i laboratori della scuola, i momenti, diciamo, anche di cibo, di cene, di pranzi, di colazioni, ma soprattutto mette a disposizione un team di docenti e di psicologi che ci accompagnano per 3 settimane, quindi 3 lunghe settimane, ma condividono con noi quelli che sono gli aspetti di didattica innovativa, che loro, diciamo, ogni anno, lavorano con i loro studenti. Ora iniziamo la presentazione. Io do il benvenuto quest'anno a un comitato scientifico che sono molto contenta di avere qui con noi. Ascolteranno la vostra presentazione e poi ci aiuteranno in un momento di domande e risposte, anche se vogliamo liberi pensieri, insomma, perché alla fine è una presentazione pubblica, ci sono alcuni genitori, ci sono alcuni docenti, quindi ci piacerebbe tenere la seconda parte del pomeriggio per chiacchierare insieme a voi e capire anche un po' com'è andata questa WebValley. Quindi abbiamo una parte di comitato scientifico, perché abbiamo fatto ricerca queste 3 settimane, e quindi abbiamo il professor Richard Wilton, che è direttore del centro di Sensors and Device alla Fondazione Bruno Kessler. Abbiamo la professoressa Martina Calovi, con cui abbiamo condiviso diverse WebValley e adesso è professoressa associata all'Università di Scienze e Tecnologia in Norvegia. E poi abbiamo il piacere quest'anno, per me il primo anno, di conoscere Elena Tomasi, ricercatrice in Fondazione nell'unità di Data Science for Industry and Physics. Quindi grazie mille, grazie anche di perché hanno già condiviso con noi un po' di tempo in queste giornate di WebValley, quindi vi ringrazio molto. In teleconferenza abbiamo il piacere di avere Sandra Justice, direttrice associata dell'Università della South Florida, e Nicholas Barbie, fondatore e presidente della società Sarasota Manatee Science and Technology Societies. Con loro siamo in dialogo e in collaborazione da più di un anno, è una conoscenza di lunga data del collega Pierluigi Bellutti, Nicolas, e stiamo cercando di aprire un dialogo per provare a esportare il modello WebValley anche negli Stati Uniti. Quindi quest'anno, diciamo, sono uditori da lontano della scuola e vediamo se il prossimo anno riusciamo ad averli ospiti per l'edizione di WebValley 2024 e poi, insomma, diamo tempo al tempo di vedere che cosa succederà. Quindi grazie mille e chiudo solo ringraziando il Collegio Arcivescovile che ha ospitato i ragazzi per 3 settimane, le colleghe dell'Art Café che vedo presenti qui oggi, con cui abbiamo condiviso i momenti diciamo collegati al cibo e anche se vogliamo di piacere in Artigianelli, e la cooperativa Samuele. Quindi grazie a tutti. Passo parola a Beppe, che diciamo in qualche modo ci siamo preparati questo discorso in italiano e in inglese, e poi il palco è vostro, ragazzi. Grazie ancora.
Thanks, Claudia. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us in this final event of the WebValley 2023. For the 23rd edition, again, we have a wonderful team of students, a wonderful team of tutors, and a wonderful environment. And again, we passed through 3 weeks of science, research, staying together, and enjoying a lot of moments that probably all of the participants will remember for a long time. Okay. Again, I briefly welcome our committee, Professor Richard Wilton from FBK, Director of the Sensor Center, Professor Martina Calovi from the NTU, Norwegian, and Dr. Elena Tomasi from FBK that will assist us in the question and answer moment after the presentation. And let me also welcome in TLC Dr. Sandra Justice, and Associate Director at the University of South Florida, and Nick Barbie, Founder and President of the Sarasota Manatee Science and Technology Society. And as Claudia told before, we are trying to develop a collaboration to transport the WebValley format also on the other side of the pond. So I think that with this, it's even more than we wanted to say, and now the floor is all for our students presenting the hard work of these 3 weeks. Thanks again.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Murilo from São Paulo, Brazil. The guys you see over there in the black chairs are Team WebValley 2023. We're so happy to have you guys here with us, taking a bit of your Friday to see our work over the past 3 weeks. Today, we woke up feeling a bit curious, so we decided to ask you guys a question. Can you figure out the relation between these 4 places? Granted, São Paulo, Los Angeles, New Delhi, and Pianura Padana are all in completely different countries, different continents, latitudes and longitudes. So really, what connects these 4 places? Besides being home for a few of us, they are all plagued by air pollution. 4 years ago, I saw my city sky turn completely black because of the fires in the Amazon rainforest. However, this didn't only happen to São Paulo. Many people also suffered this fate, such as Los Angeles and New Delhi. So really, if you ask any of us our story with air pollution, we all have something to tell you. Unfortunately, these aren't just stories.
As we all know, air pollution is one of the biggest challenges that humanity is currently facing. There are several bad impacts on both our health and our economics. In terms of our health, we should consider fine particles and ultrafine particulate matter. These are PM2.5 particles, meaning that they have a diameter of less than 2.5 microns. These are very small and can get into our alveoli and into our bloodstream, and are then carried around by red blood cells all the way into our body, including into our brain, and can also damage it. Then there are coarse particles, which are PM10 particles. These have a diameter of 10 microns, meaning that they are physically too big to get into the alveoli, but they can still get stuck in the inner surface of the lungs and can lead to a higher probability of having lung cancer. In terms of the economics, meanwhile, we have some issues in the medical health costs and in a lower crop yield. The medical health costs are actually pretty major. In fact, Medicare every single year spends over $2,500 on every single American just in medical bills related to air pollution. And in terms of the agriculture, air pollution causes a lower crop yield, causing over $1 billion in damages every single year. So you can probably understand why we are so keen on tackling the issue of air pollution. But what have we actually done so far?
In this journey, we are guided by the 2 main principles of FBK's mission, which are excellence in scientific research and interest in those fields like science and technology that allow us to have an economical and social great impact. Our mission is based on the monitoring of pollutants. We believe it is of extreme importance for us to keep track of which agents are most prevalent in our environment, because each pollutant has different interactions, and only by knowing these interactions we can develop the right solutions. We plan to achieve this mission, our WebValley 2023 mission, by working in 4 different directions. First, we focus on the processing of datasets acquired from both innovative and certified sensors, and we manage to find patterns between this data and meteorological data. Second, we focus on finding comparison and patterns between indoor and outdoor air quality data. Third, we focus on the development, implementation, and validation of algorithms in order to find patterns and hidden relationship inside this data. And last, we work on the update of an open access dashboard in order to improve our spatial time data visualization.
Well, it's noticeable that this challenge is very complex, and hence we need a wide range of skills, of mindsets, of ideas to tackle it properly. It makes sense that the WebValley team is as diverse as it can get, so we have obviously loads of people from Italy, but from different cities and different regions, so really different backgrounds. And also we have our international team, which comprises people from India, Germany, the USA, and obviously Brazil. This creates a melting pot that allows pretty much everything to happen. And I'm not telling you that differences are always good, because we've had our fair share of fights over these 3 weeks, but we were guided and bonded by our common goal, which is to learn as much as we can and tackle the problem we've been facing during our entire lives.
As you already know, today is the last day of WebValley 2023. But many days preceded this one. And each one of them gave us the opportunity to learn so many things about different topics. All thanks to our tutors who guided us through our journey and through the lessons that were fundamental to achieve our goals. The main topics that we studied are air monitoring physics, which we had the chance to learn a little bit about, monitoring devices, which are fundamental to obtain data that is required in large amounts for most studies, and this would not be obtainable without the use of sensor systems. There are also air quality monitoring stations placed throughout the country that are extremely useful to track the air quality of the territory. They were also very important to us, since all of the groups use data taken from some of the stations to tackle their challenges. We learned also about data science, which is a field that uses statistics, scientific methods, algorithms, and so on to extract knowledge and insights from structured and unstructured data. Data interoperability is the ability of systems and services that create, exchange, and consume data to have clear contents and meaning of that data. This should speed up the development, and they should also follow some open access policy. IT tools are the daily tools that we use to face our challenges. Some examples are scientific programming languages such as Python and R, and also cloud technology using the Microsoft Azure platform. Soft skills are the relational and behavioral skills that influence how you conduct yourself in a workplace. For example, problem solving, empathy, and fundamental skills in working as a team. As already mentioned, during these weeks, we focused on 4 topics linked to air quality, and we split in 4 groups to approach each one of them. Nothing of this could have been possible, though, without the help and our collaboration with FBK and DataNext. We will now present you the 4 challenges.
The objective of the first challenge of WebValley 2023 was to identify the relationship between ozone concentration, weather phenomena, and other pollutants. Our challenge were focused on ozone because it can damage human lungs and also worsens respiratory conditions. Ozone can affect negatively on agriculture and crops production. Ozone is a non-anthropogenic secondary pollutant, which means it's not directly produced by humans. And for this reason, it's very difficult to predict its behavior and control it. Also, ozone is a result of a very complex reaction between VOCs, nitrogen oxides, and solar radiation. After an extensive literature review of different articles about ozone, we have made 3 research questions. The first question was how ozone is related with the pollutants and the weather parameters. The second question was what is the causing factor of ozone night peaks at Riva del Garda. Lake Garda, sorry. And the last question is, what is the relationship between ozone and heat islands? And if the temperature play a role. To accomplish our challenge, we have used data from different air and weather monitoring sensor stations, which have reliable and analytical sensor. As you can see from this map, we have used data from 5 different stations in Trentino, and also we have data from 1 station in Lombardia and 2 stations in Ferrara, where the sensors were built by data group. All of these data were taken thanks to different environmental protection agencies like ARPA, ARPAE, APPA, and Meteo Trentino. And the sensors were built from Airbrake and EDQ.
Sorry, okay. No, okay, sorry. The first objective of our challenge was actually mainly related to the exploration of relations between ozone and weather conditions and ozone and primary pollutants. So the first thing that we did as a team was sitting down and doing some literature review. And so we surfed the internet to try to find some articles that could help us in our process of research. And by doing that, we actually discovered that there were some already known information about ozone concentration and its behavior. For example, the fact that ozone has an inverse correlation with nitrogen dioxide, and also the fact that ozone has a direct correlation with solar radiation. Once we had this information and we had informed ourselves about ozone chemistry, we went on to collecting the data and pre-processing the data. And this task took us the most time. It took us about 2.5 days because we wanted to collect a big quantity of data in order to formulate our hypothesis on a really complete data set. And once we had that data set, we analyzed it with some statistical analysis, and we obtained some graphs such as linear regression graphs, trivariate scatter plots, and also matrix correlation graphs, such as the one that you can see in the slide behind me. So in this graph, we can see the correlations that we expected from literature, but there is also another really interesting thing, which is the correlation that we can see between ozone and temperature, which has a Pearson correlation value of 0.85. This could mean that temperature could actually have a key role among the other already known factors in the variation of the levels of ozone concentration in the atmosphere. So to further investigate this information that we gathered from the graphs, we went on and did some linear regression graphs that showed us in a much more clearer way the correlation that there was between ozone and the parameters that we mentioned before. The data that we used to actually obtain this graph was from APPA for the air quality and from Meteo Trentino for the weather conditions. And both data sets contain data going from 2013 to 2023, so we have 10 years of data. The graph that you have seen are related to the Santa Chiara station, which is an air monitoring station placed in the city of Trento. But from what we have seen, we can also say that the station in Rovereto, which is also a urban station, and the Borgo Valsugana station, which is a suburban station, have pretty similar data to the station in Santa Chiara, and the correlation that we can find are pretty much the same.
Now we will say outliner among Trentino station. Looking at the station from which we have taken our data, we have found that there are some significant differences. Most prominently Monte Gazza near Molveno. Here we can see a box plot with a scatter plot that show us the variance of ozone between the Trentino station. Here we can clearly see that there is a station that has some difference compared with the other station. It's the station of Monte Gazza. We can see that the data of Monte Gazza has a higher medium value of ozone and also a little internal variance. A little internal variance means that the data of value of ozone are more constant in time. Our theory is that the higher level of ozone is due to the higher elevation and so the closeness with the stratospheric ozone, that in this area is a constant background. We have found other example of this phenomenon in the literature in a similar environment of the environment of Monte Gazza. For the small variance, we have thought at the negligible presence of nitrogen dioxide that work as a limiting factor. The nitrogen dioxide is a pollutant that is produced directly from the human activity, so in a rural environment like the one of Monte Gazza is present in a low concentration. Here we can see a heat map that shows us that nitrogen dioxide hasn't a correlation with solar radiation, temperature or ozone. And this is a big difference between this station and the station of Santa Chiara that we have seen before, where the correlation with ozone was high and negative. This suggests us that the nitrogen dioxide has not a part in the production of ozone in this station, and so the ozone in Monte Gazza has a different nature from the ozone in Santa Chiara. This difference of nature confirms our hypothesis.
During our data analysis, we noticed another anomaly, the anomaly of night peaks specifically. Now, we know that for the production of ozone, solar radiation is essential. However, in the night, there is no solar radiation. Therefore, we can see in these two graphs, in both cases, in the Lombardian section of the Garda, as well as the Riva section of the Garda, there are significant increases in ozone concentrations in the night. Therefore, this is a departure from literature. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first time such peaks have been observed in the Lake Garda region. And the data set that we have used runs from 2021 December all the way till 2022 December. In this data set, we noticed that out of 365 days, 265 nights specifically have these night peaks. Therefore, 75% of the nights have these night peaks. Coming to the seasonal variations, we saw these peaks in 3 different stations, Riva del Garda, Lombardian section of the Garda, as well as in Trento. And here you can see that the frequency is the highest in winter, followed by fall, spring, and almost none in the summer. Comparing Riva del Garda with Lombardia shows you that the frequency and magnitude of these night peaks are much higher at Riva when compared to Lombardia, while the station of Santa Chiara at Trento has little to none of these night peaks that can be seen. So to understand this phenomena better, we looked at environmental dynamics, such as wind direction and general ozone movements. Our hypothesis for this ozone peaks is specifically horizontal transport of ozone from the Po Basin towards Lake Garda, as Lake Garda during the evening and the night acts as a low pressure zone as the water cools down slower than the land around it, therefore bringing ozone-rich air from the Po Basin towards Lake Garda. The down valley winds, which are seen in red and in the neon blue, are the winds that come down from the Adige Valley and block the winds going into the Trento Valley. We also see a difference in peak magnitudes and frequency between Lombardia section of the Garda as well as in Riva del Garda. We believe this is specifically due to the wind directions. And here you can see in the yellow as well as the white lines, which is the wind directions at the particular moments. The wind moves from the plains of Lake Garda towards Riva del Garda. And the topography of Garda, Riva del Garda, makes it an ozone trap, as it is surrounded by mountains on three sides, and the wind of the valleys does not allow the ozone to essentially escape that region, while the ozone in the Lombardian section as well as the Veneto section of the Garda is able to transport in and out of the plains, therefore creating a much larger peak as seen in Riva del Garda.
For our last objective, we wanted to explore the relationship between ozone and temperature, especially in heat islands. Heat islands are zones, usually in urban areas, where the temperature is much higher than in other areas of that same city. In literature, we have found that ozone is produced due to solar radiation, but we have found little to no research about the influence that temperature has on ozone concentration. So we wanted to explore this relationship, and we did this by plotting the ozone on the x-axis, the solar radiation on the y-axis, and the temperature as the points color. As you can see in the Santa Chiara graph, which is from Trento, plot A and B, and in Ferrara, plot C and D, have the same solar radiation, but they differ in temperature. The ones that have more temperature, so B and D, have also a higher ozone concentration, which means that while solar radiation is necessary for ozone production, temperature has also a huge impact on it. From all of these observations that we have made, we decided to train a machine learning model to predict ozone concentration based on solar radiation, temperature, and nitrogen dioxide concentration. After we found an equation that could describe the phenomenon, we predicted ozone concentration on a data set that the model had never seen, and we found an R-squared value of 0.75, which is pretty good, taking into account that our model is a very simple one, and because of this, more complex model can be made that are very effective in predicting ozone. This model could be used by, for example, weather forecasting stations for predicting ozone concentration accurately in the city to give a better service and to sensibilize citizens about the danger that is ozone high concentrations. Sorry. To recap, our challenge found a correlation between ozone and weather conditions and primary pollutants. We observed differences in Monte Gazza station from the other station in Trentino. We found a possible explanation of night peaks, and we described the importance of temperature on ozone concentration.
Now we are talking about challenge number 2. Our challenge aims at finding and exploring differences and similarities between air quality indoor and outdoor, understanding the correlations pattern between them. A large part of the population is convinced that the air quality is better indoor rather than outdoor, since they think that a closed environment is safer than an open one. In fact, according to a study by the OQAI, so the Indoor Air Quality Observatory, indoor air is on average 5 to 7 times worse and more polluted than outdoor air. Even though we spend 80 to 90% of our time indoor, mainly in our workplace, this is due to many factors and pollutants that can have an impact on our health. Some of the pollutants are the SO2, NO2, PM2.5, PM10, and CO2 that can cause many illnesses up to lung disease, asthma, and even cancer. We took data from different sources. The Santa Chiara monitoring station in Trento, an indoor monitoring device from LS Analytica that is in our working room in Artigianelli, Meteo Trentino, and a survey made by us. For the monitoring device and the monitoring station, we observed 2 pollutants, the CO2 and the PM2.5, between the 22nd of June and the 1st of July. The questions of the survey are about our body perceptions on temperature, air quality, body feeling, and if the air is better indoor than outside. From Meteo Trentino, we took temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, and precipitations. To find out if indoor air quality is actually better than outdoor air quality, we worked on the data that we had, comparing them in different ways. Data taken from the various sources were harmonized and then later used for the comparison in the graphs. To use the data, we had to convert and transform them into compatible structures. This is a fundamental step that allows us to investigate the pollutant and the correlations. We worked mainly on finding correlations between perceived and measured indoor concentration, and on doing a prediction of indoor data from outdoor data using machine learning.
We started by representing with some graphs the concentrations measured by the indoor and outdoor sensors, to try to see common trends and to find some correlations. Comparing them, we saw that if there is a spike in PM2.5 outdoors, after a period of time, this spike happens also indoors. These peaks can be due to environmental factors such as fireworks. So we came out with a question. How long does it take PM2.5 to get into our houses? We tried to investigate the transportation process of outdoor particulate matter, PM, inside with the effect of convection currents. We saw that it takes about an hour that is a reasonable time for that PM takes to diffuse from outside to inside. As it can be observed in the graph, the correlation became 0.72 after shifting the data for an hour. To understand the correlation between our sensations and the indoor data, we made a questionnaire a questionnaire in which we have asked different questions, like what do people thought about the air quality, or about the temperature, if it was cold or hot, which was the body feeling, or even if they felt better inside or outside. We asked our teammates to fill this form at the end of every break. Then we made some plots in which we represented the form variables and the data of the sensor. We observed that when the concentration of CO2 is high, the perceived air quality decreases. In the graph, it is shown how they are correlated. In orange, there are the results of the questionnaire, and the points are bigger the more people voted that day at that time, while in blue it is represented they are represented the measurements of the indoor sensor. As can be seen from the trend of perceptions, people notice the changes in air quality. With PM2.5, however, the correlation is smaller. This because PM 2.5 is harder to perceive. We also observed that the perception of air quality and room temperature are correlated. This is because when the air is hot, it seems to us to be of lower quality.
To understand better the correlations we have seen in plots and to know which are the pollutants that influence the most our perceptions, we have created a correlation matrix between these two data frames. We have seen that there is a Pearson correlation between the CO2 concentration and the body feeling perception. This value is minus 0.56, and this suggests that we are able to feel the concentration of the CO2. In fact, when the concentration of CO2 decreases, the air quality increases. We have found another interesting correlation between the air quality perception and the temperature measured by the sensor. This value is minus 0.41 and suggests that we tend to confound the air temperature with the air quality. Finally, the correlation between the perceived temperature and the air quality perception was only minus 0.01, so it was very low. This analysis show that the temperature is a strong confounding factor when assessing how good we are at perceiving air quality.
To approach the indoor versus outdoor comparison, we decided to create a machine learning model as a statistical approach to the problem, and to show what can be done with this type of technology. Our model takes the data from the air quality station situated in Santa Chiara Park, from an indoor monitoring sensor provided to us by Lab Service Analytica. And when it comes to weather parameters, we took our data from Meteo Trentino. We ended up using the PM 2.5 since it's the pollutant with the most trustworthy data from our indoor sensor, and one of the pollutants shared both by our air quality station and from our indoor monitoring device. We chose linear regression as a model since it was the best one among the ones we tried to predict the indoor concentration of PM 2.5 based on the outdoor one and based on some weather parameters such as precipitation, air pressure, and external temperature. As you can see from the graph in the slide, we split our data between training in green and testing in red by using an 80%, 20% proportion. We obtained during testing a mean squared error of 1.57 micrograms per cubic meter. And as a coefficient of determination, which is also called R squared, a value of 0.65. These results are indeed promising, considering the small amount of data that we had as an input. Our model struggled to follow the trend line, which is in blue, especially in two occasions. On a Sunday, the 25th, and on a Monday, the 26th. On both occasions, we were not in the room, and there was no, the environment was closed, so there was no interaction between outdoor and indoor air. And the model was not able to reconstruct it. As future work, we foresee an improvement of the model by collecting more data to train it. For example, having more Sundays to analyze a flat line, like in the case I just mentioned. would help a lot to have a more precise model. The validation of the correlation model between indoor and outdoor air quality could have a huge impact on citizens' habits. In fact, by knowing the outdoor air quality level monitored by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the indoor air quality could be deduced and used to provide citizens with recommendations about how to manage their air ventilation.
So, to improve the study of the correlations between indoor pollution and perception in the future, we will use larger amount of data to make the results more reliable. We will try to understand better the correlations we have already discovered, and at the end, for example, between the air quality perception and the temperature of the room, and at the end we will create a new form to try to make the data which comes from it as objective as possible, and also set the filling time of the forms and as precise as possible.
To conclude, the results that we are taking home for what we did in these 3 weeks are 3. We found many correlations between the survey and the indoor pollutant concentration. Then, an indoor and outdoor delay of the entrance of the pollutant from outdoor. And our third result is our machine learning model to predict the indoor air quality from the outdoor one.
The focus of the third challenge was calibrating and optimizing low-cost or cost-effective gas pollution sensors. So why did we choose to focus on this issue at large? It's impossible to solve any problem without completely understanding it. And right now, as terrifying as it is, we don't completely understand air pollution. We don't have enough information to create a full atmospheric profile of all the gas pollutants that are in our atmosphere. And the reason for that is because proper air quality monitoring is expensive, whether that's in regards to the financial costs of manufacturing it, implementing it, and maintaining it, or even just the amount of power it requires. That means that air quality monitoring that's actually accurate isn't accessible for the majority of the scientific community. Low-cost gas sensors provide the opportunity for more knowledge to the scientific community for them to actually understand the problem that impacts millions of lives. So with the opportunity to calibrate and access gas sensors and the opportunity to optimize them, we give the scientific community the opportunity to understand this problem. And any opportunity that they have, whether it's as a supplemental tool or in rural communities for the scientific community to be able to have a clear atmospheric profile, that's a benefit that automatically gets inherently passed on to everyday consumers, because any advancement and any knowledge made by the scientific community in regards to air pollution is something critical to the world as a whole. So we started this problem by first looking at the data to try and diagnose the actual problem with low-cost gas sensors. Our data was from APA, or the Agency of Provisional Protection for the Environment, as well as the FPK gas sensors. So APA is the governmental agency that provided us analytical tools, and these analytical tools are fundamentally different than the gas sensors we're analyzing, because in addition to just responding to external stimuli, they're also analyzing the external stimuli and cross-verifying it. So this was our standard of comparison for what we wanted our sensors to be able to detect. So we used the Environmental Protection Agency's data from Villabolsano and Santa Chiara, and we got their data set so that we would have something for our sensors to be tested on. That data from APA was 300,000 data points, and it was collected hourly for 2 years, and it was a very clean set of data that we were able to analyze. The other set of data we had was from our own low-cost or cost-effective sensors. And these FPK gas sensors produce a very different type of data. In a set of 300,000 data points, we had 2 million from these 2 locations. And they were across 7 or 8 sensing materials that were rotated in sections of 8, and they were across 4 years in piecemeal amounts. So what we really got was a jigsaw of data, some sensing materials that had data for 3 months, others for 2 to 3 years. So it was really difficult and a lot messier than the APA data, but that is what we had to attempt to consolidate and pre-process.
Data exploration is one of the most important parts in data analysis. We primarily focused on data visualization, so actually understanding the data that we had and seeing it. We used the FBK sensor in this part because the APA sensors, they are very accurate and they are also certified. Primarily, we began by analyzing the patterns in the data. So, for example, in the first chart that you can see, there is a daily correlation between the days. Then we analyzed the issues in the data. So in the second chart, there was a gap, a 3-month gap from December 2022 all the way to February 2023. And in the third chart, there's actually an issue with saturation. Saturation is a big issue because we cannot actually know the true concentration of the pollutants in that time because the sensors cannot simply measure it. It's too high. So how did we actually deal with those issues? Well, we used data cleaning. In data cleaning, we eliminated the saturated data, and then we dampened the sharp spikes inside of the data. So in the chart, we can see that there are some spikes, and we had to deal with those spikes by dampening them, so by bringing them below. And now you might be thinking, you had some gaps before, and now you have eliminated some data, so you have even more gaps. What do? Well, we do gap filling, and we did 2 different ways to solve this issue. The first one was by merging different sensors. So, for instance, in the Via Bolzano, we merged sensor number 1 and sensor number 2. This was done because the 2 sensors had the same sensing material, and we managed to fill 2 months of data. But there were still some gaps, and to cover those gaps, to fill them, we had to use machine learning.
Now in this part of the presentation, we are going to cover modeling techniques. And I would like to start by giving a brief definition of a neural network. So what is a neural network? A neural network basically is a computer algorithm that tries to emulate the human brain. And it's made of many interconnected parts, in which every part of it is trying to make estimations and prediction about the input data. In fact, in order to train it, we have to provide our initial data set, and by looking at examples and adjusting its connections, the model can learn pattern from the data and make prediction out of it. Okay, now I will talk about the algorithm that we have chosen to use for our gas calibrations. Gas sensor calibrations, and it is the random forest regression. And I want to mention why didn't we use the random tree regression? That is another type of algorithm, very similar to this one, and it is because of 2 main problems. The first one is that there's a risk of overfitting the data. This means that our model, instead of trying to predict from the data that we have provided, is actually learning the exact same pattern. So if we wanted to generalize the prediction, we couldn't make it because otherwise we will have the exact pattern that the real values are, basically. And the second problem of the random tree regression is that we can have a high variance prediction. And that means, for example, that the first prediction may be 15 and the second one may be 2. And obviously we don't want to have a large scale of predictions, but we want to have them as close as possible to each other. So the first model is a very complex tree that tries to analyze every single data and make prediction out of it. And this one instead is is using more trees, and every single tree is analyzing is predicting a single value on its own. In fact, if we wanted to predict some numbers, we have to make an average of all the predictions that the tree have made. And if we wanted to divide the groups, we would have to count the most present prediction made out of the trees. And this algorithm actually solves the first two problems that I mentioned before, so the overfitting problem and the high variance prediction problem. And if we wanted to make a real example in the real life, we could consider this algorithm such as, for example, a group of scientists who are called for making a prediction about a topic. Every single scientist is going to analyze the characteristics of the data and is going to make prediction out of it. And as I mentioned before, we either make an average of all the predictions that the scientists have made, or we just count the most present value out of the predictions.
We tried both these types of models in order to fit the correlation between the resistance of the sensor response, and the actual concentration of the gas. And here's why that's important. So the first type of regression we tried was a neural network regression. And this is one that we expected to succeed, because generally neural networks are pretty good at calibration. But we tried it, and as you can see, we got an R-squared, or correlation value, of 39%, which isn't very strong. And the reason we realized retroactively why the neural network regression model wasn't the best model was because the neural network we used was a simple linear neural network regression model. And with simple linear, what you're telling the network is that one explanatory cause is responsible for one scalar factor. So in this case, the concentration of the gas is the only thing that affects the response of the sensor. And in real life, that's not true. So the model couldn't make an accurate prediction after a period of time, because the rate that the sensor changes in response to concentration of gas changes over time. So as you can see, in the beginning, the model did a pretty good job predicting what we thought the expected values were going to be, but then it sharply turns away when the rate of change of the sensor starts to change, because the model is looking for a consistent linear prediction, and it's not able to actually fit to real life when the fluctuating of the sensor changes how it changes in response to the concentration of gas. That's why the random forest regression model works so much better, because, as you heard, it's capable of generalization. So rather than just looking for one specific pattern, one explanatory cause, it's able to take into account more parameters, because when you split data, you get different decision trees, and you're able to have a more generalized solution that can follow better the fluctuation of the sensor in response to the concentration of gas. So as you can see, that had a much tighter correlation with a 94% success rate. And the root squared error that you can see just means that there was a smaller gap between the predicted value and the actual value. So this model was much more successful, and it's because of the generalization that was just explained.
The goal of the second part of our work was to design a model for predicting the future values of pollutants concentration. After trying different types of machine learning models like linear regression and random forest regression, we discovered that random forest regression model was the best in order to predict future values of pollutants concentration. We took the predicted values and we compared them with the actual values provided by analytical sensors, so by the APA data. And also, in order to choose our model, we look at the values of both the mean squared error and the R squared, and we also tried to change the different values of the parameters in our model, and we chose those values that actually gave us the best model. As an input, we gave to the machine the data about the temperature of the heaters. We also gave the machine the data about the voltage and the resistance of the sensors and the concentration of the pollutants. Instead, as an output, we asked the machine to give us the predicted concentration of the pollutants. So in these two graphs, you can see in the first one how our model worked on the prediction of PM 2.5, while on the second graph you can see how our model worked with nitrogen dioxide. On the x-axis you can see the predicted value, so what the model gave us. On the y-axis you can see instead the real concentration of that gas that we took from the data collected by analytical sensors. From the R-squared value, which is 0.68 in the first case and 0.79 in the second case, you can see how well our model worked, because this means that the correlation between the predicted value and the actual value is really close. There are some future improvements that we would like to suggest you. So first of all, we would like to include more sensing materials than one in the training of our model. Second, we would also like to develop more calibration functions, one for each season, because the concentration of the pollutants changes in the season. It changes according to the seasons. And we would also like to include in the model the information about the time dependence of the sensor signal. In conclusion, we developed a pipeline made of two algorithms. First, an algorithm which takes the sensor signals and converts our dataset into a more clean and stable one. It tackles 4 different problems, as we said. First, gap filling. Second, shape changes. Third, the problem of broken sensors and saturation elimination. And also we develop a model which determines the calibration function through a machine learning algorithm.
So challenge number 4, coming from the last year's challenge, that was about to create a dashboard to manage the sensor platforms and visualize the data. And they named it Air Watching. They did a great job, but MNF, the FBK research group, told us to improve the dashboard, fixing some technical issues as well as adding some new features. So by doing that, we have enhanced the dashboard, we have improved its capability, as well as we tried our best to bring a more user-friendly interface. As you can see, the older dashboard version, this dashboard is providing a view of some sensor data related to the FPK sensors. So there are 2 stations which are via Bolzano and via Santa Chiara. As you can see, these data are very useful when it comes to the researchers, so they can analyze and study this data, and they can use it depending on their needs. But now, you may ask why this dashboard is only for the researcher, why not for the citizens like us? So we also give the opportunity to the citizens like us, so they can get a graphical view of the air pollution situations. So now you may imagine, like, researchers and citizens both have different needs. So to solve this issue, we have used UX design process. So by implementing this process, we have provided a more user-friendly interface for the citizens as well. So now let's take a look. What are some of the improvements that we have done? The first one is improve the data visualization and efficiency. That means we have improved the data visualization, so you can get the data more effectively, and the new version of the dashboard have the capability to load the large amount of data as much as possible. The second one is to better visual representation and easy data exploration, which means that we allow the users so they can explore the data with easy and intuitive tools. The third one is enhanced real-time monitoring, which is one of the most important features. That means if any unusual or emergency situation happens, so we can easily detect what actually happened to our sensors. So to make sure how we have improved our dashboard, we have used a design thinking process which guides us through 4 phases: analyzing, identify, design, and code. So we first analyze our dashboard. So what are some issues, what are some improvements that we have to do? So after analyzing these issues, we have identified these features, then we have designed these features by brainstorming our ideas, by wireframing. Then we code using one of the most popular language, which is Python. And yeah, so yeah.
We have two different types of audience, the researchers parts and the wide public. So we focused on the researchers' needs, that we asked them what they needed, and we provide them a map, the synchronized zoom for the plots, and the caching system that is a way to increase the speed of the dashboard. In the other part, in the other side, we provided a new page that allow people to understand in an easier way all the things related to air pollution.
So designing the new user interface was really fun but really challenging. Over the past 7 days, the design team thrashed our design several times, so we had to iterate to redo it all over again. But eventually we came up with something really solid. We also kept talking to the technical team all the time to make sure we were conveying the right information. During those 7 days, we principled our research in 3 main points. Firstly, we had to make sure that we were conveying the right, proper information for the public we were intending. So for example, if I'm a non-researcher, it wouldn't matter to me see the heater voltage because this doesn't mean anything to me. So we were focusing more on the concentration of pollutants, the information of the pollutants themselves, because you have to consider every single level of knowledge. Second, really important is the design. It doesn't matter if the information is accurate and relevant, but it also must be passed on in an organized way. Otherwise, it all becomes a cluster and you can't understand anything. Trust me, I've come across like several different types of dashboards, and some of them were disasters with loads of information. And third, obviously, we had to provide explanations of certain metrics, certain instruments and observations that the wider public may not be instructed about. So let's take a look at the dashboard itself. It should work the way it's here. So this is the user-friendly page. On the top, you can see we can select the location. Currently, we have 2 stations, Via Bolzano and Parco Santa Chiara. If we change the location, you can see that the bar underneath it should change the pollutants, because each station measures different pollutants. On the right-hand side, we have the graphs, the data history, which shows the level of pollutants over the past hours. And underneath it, a brief explanation to show, well, this is weird, sorry. Then underneath, we have a brief explanation about the pollutant itself. As I said, it was really important for us to provide this explanation so the user wouldn't be looking at something he doesn't understand. Also, in the left-hand side, we have the levels of the pollutants divided into 2 toasts. The one above is gaseous pollutants, which are basically nitrogen dioxide, ozone, and CO in this case. Underneath it, we have particulate matter. We separated those 2 into different toasts because they're different types of pollutants. And also, if we click on the information, a pop-up tab appears, and you can know more about the types of pollutants themselves. So let me try to change the location so you can see what actually happens. So everything changed, right? The amount of pollutants, the graphs and so on, they're all changed because it's a different station. So this is really what we wanted with this dashboard, and we're pretty much happy that we could achieve it. So this is the user-friendly dashboard. Now, Kiliano, him, is going to talk to you about the researcher dashboard, which has these 3 pages underneath the user that you see over there.
So we start with the first page that loads this useful pop-up that is a simple map. In this map we can see the 2 stations, and if we select one of them, we can open the plots that are related to that specific station. On the top part we can see all the sensors in that specific station. We can see their state, if they are good or if they are saturated. if they are saturated, we can see their float value like this or this on the main plot. The main plot represents the sensor resistance that is useful to understand the gas concentration, because the sensor reacts and gives a certain resistance in accordance to the presence of certain gases. On the bottom part, we can see other three plots. The heater resistance and the heater voltage are used to understand at what temperature the sensor will start to work. And the bottom right plot is used for understand three values that can change the behavior or the sensors. In this page, the fitted FPK data page, in this page we can see a model that processes the data from the previous page and calculate the amount of presence of the gases. We can see a comparison between the APA and the FBK sensors. So we can see that our sensors are really working and they measure well the gases concentration. We can even zoom in to see better the correlation. The last page is about the APA sensors. We have the drop-down to select the station and the buttons to select the pollutant. The main plot shows the pollutant that we have selected. And on the bottom, we have the year comparison graph, the weekday average graph, and a box that shows us how much times the selected pollutant crossed the threshold. In this case, the O3 is fine because it hasn't crossed the threshold for the amount of time that we have selected. But if we go on other pollutants, we can see all the measurements and all the times that it crossed the threshold. This was the dashboard, and now we continue with the backend part.
When it comes to the backend aspect of our project, which involves data collection and storage, we employed an effective approach to accomplish our main goal. Our aim was to transfer data from an old database to a new one based on the SensorThings standard. SensorThings is a standard developed by the Open Hospital Consortium for the management and the interoperability of data from sensors in different IoT environments. To achieve this, we created a Python script which made the data migration easier. To ensure perfect data interoperability, which is an important feature that guarantees the consistency and the usability of data along several systems, we decided to implement the Frost server. Frost server is an implementation of the SensorThings standard, which provides us a complete server infrastructure for managing, storing, and visualizing data according to the standard. Selecting Frost was a deliberate decision, as it ensures it ensures a unified data format, a reliable utilization, and a real-time data retrieval for any user or systems. Data interoperability, in essence, helps researchers to access and share sets of standardized data, saving a lot of effort to adapt them and analyze them to different contexts. Data interoperability is a crucial feature for the efficient exchange of information between systems and for the reduce of the cost and for sharing innovation. Moreover, we took advantage of the Frost server to provide fast and real-time access to data for a more reliable and efficient system.
Let's take a deep into the technologies we used to build the software side of our challenge. First of all, we used only one programming language, Python. We choose this for both its reliability and because it offers many modules that can increase the functionalities that you can use to develop your application. Our Postgres database communicates with both Flask and Frost servers. Using Python, we employed Plotly, a powerful library to implement the air watching data visualization. We need to use both of these technologies because Flask is for the older sensors that are already deployed, and Frost is for a newer one. As said previously, at the end, we merge the data into one database that we use as our data source. However, to make all this work fine, we need a framework to tunnel Python, Plotly, and the data. We used Dash. When we try new things, we know that there will be challenges along the way. It's part of a learning and growing process. So, we want to share with you the main obstacles we faced while creating our program. Overcoming this obstacle required careful planning and organization to make sure our data could be transferred successfully. The first challenge was to understand how the sensor thinks data model works. We needed to figure out how to correctly change the old data format to a new one so that it could be used with the Frost server. Even though there was some information about the software, it didn't have enough details on how to use it. We were also using Python, and we use a special library from the Fraunhofer Institute to communicate with the server. However, this library had many limitations in his code since it was a new project. But don't worry, we exploited this situation not only to fix those development issues, but also to share our improvement with others in the open source software community. This means that we made the library better and helped other programmers who will use it. We think open source software is really important. It means that people can work together to make software better by sharing their ideas and fixing problems. It promotes transparency, allows users to access, modify, and distribute the source code, and encourage innovation and sharing of knowledge, all following a common ideal. By fixing some core issues in the library provided by the Fraunhofer Institute and sharing our improvements, we were able to help others to make the software better and the community stronger. In the end, even though we faced these challenges, we were able to build a strong and accurate data structure that worked perfectly with the sensor things standard. In conclusion, at challenge number 4, we achieved many topics. We significantly improved last year's dashboard. We redesigned our data structure to fit with sensor things standard. We inserted our data in Frost server, and we contributed to the open source community by fixing limitations in the library.
To conclude today's presentation, we wanted to share with you what we have learned throughout this experience and to summarize our achievements. As we said in the introduction, we're all here because of our common interest in air pollution and air quality. And to learn how to do research in this field to possibly help solve the problem in the future. To do research, though, we had to learn how to gather data, and so learn sensor functioning, how to analyze it through data visualization and machine learning, and storytelling, to communicate our discoveries to common people in order to have actual advancements in science.
Moving on from what we have learned to what we have achieved as a team. WebValley 2023 has increased accessibility and availability of air pollution data through the dashboard, which has provided common people with an easy access and visualization tool for air pollution. For the researchers, it provides an important and effective tool to analyze certain data points that would not have been possible before. We have also been able to achieve a better calibration for cost-effective sensors, thereby getting us more accurate data. This makes cost-effective sensors a more viable alternative to costly analytical sensors. We have also gotten a hang of the relationship between indoor and outdoor air quality, as well as people's perspective on it. A better understanding of ozone-related phenomena, such as the ozone night peaks and its relation with heat islands and temperature, has been a crucial achievement as well. WebValley 2023 has brought together young people passionate about data science and the environment, talent and facilitators alike from all across the world to this quaint city of Trento. Today, we are all here because of WebValley 2023's mission and vision. Our work and aims have been communicated to the outside world, to the brilliant communication office, who have documented these 3 weeks in every single detail at the Instagram handle of FBK_WebValley. We have also had the support of several scientific partners and collaborators who have provided us with specific data points, help, as well as mentorship, without which our process as well as our results would not be as good as they are. Lastly, and most importantly, WebValley 2023 would not have been possible without the two people here. The two directors from logistics to mentoring, every single problem that we had, every email we sent, a reply within an hour. That is what we got. Every problem that each one of us faced was solved in a jiffy and in an efficient manner by none other than the two directors, Claudia Dolci ma'am as well as Giuseppe Yurman sir, without whom WebValley 2023 would not have happened at all. Thank you. Now we are open to questions. We would like to invite the committees to take the dais.
un cenno chi vuole rispondere. Nessuno si muoverà.
So thank you all for your great presentation, guys. I had the pleasure to follow you during these weeks, and I can say that you did a pretty good job. So thank you very much. Everything was very interesting, and I think we all have some questions. We will probably have to select them. We're going to proceed, or try to proceed, by challenge. Okay, so we will start with the first one. Do you want to start, or I'll go with the first one? Okay, you're drinking. Okay, so I'll start with that one. So I found pretty interesting the analysis that you made on the Lake of Garda, and with that nice picture. Maybe I can go back with the slides. May I? So you did a very interesting analysis on the Lake Garda winds, and the question I wanted to ask you, was about this. So you said that there was these ozone peaks, night peaks, especially not during the summer, if I'm correct. Okay. I was asking myself if you try to understand if the wind was different in different seasons, or if you just check the wind, on average on the whole year. I don't know who wants to answer, but thank you.
So our hypothesis of why horizontal transport of ozone does not particularly occur during the summer specifically is because ozone decomposition happens faster when temperatures are higher. So ozone concentration is already reduced while transportation. And we did look at wind direction, specifically in these three zones: the Veneto side of Garda, the Lombardian side of Garda, and the Trentino side of Garda. And wind direction is an extremely interesting parameter because it's actually directions, but in values. So 0 is the north, 180 is the south, 90 is the east, and 270 is the west. And in each of these cases, we saw that the wind on the southern side of Lake Garda always blows, irrespective of season, between the northwest to the northeast. And because it blows from the northwest to the northeast, between these zones, essentially, we see that it will have to go along the shores of Lake Garda, because on both sides of Lake Garda are essentially very high mountains, which act as barriers, not allowing the pollutants to cross across it. And the downwinds from the Adige Valley, which is a very well-known concept of diurnal winds blowing down from the Sarka as well as the Adige Valley, essentially concentrate air in Riva del Garda, making it a trap of a sort. That is what we... Thank you. Thank
you. First of all, thank you very much for all your contribution and presentation. It was really great to see what kind of results you achieved in just 3 weeks. So thank you very much. I have a question regarding challenge 2. Should I go to the graph? Yeah.
Because we also have participants that are following online.
Yeah.
And if no, the microphone.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I was interested in understand. So you said that the model was not able to capture some days or one day when you guys were out or something like that. So did you notice the same, or I cannot notice the same behavior in the data at night, for example? Is there I mean, did you give any thought about why that specific time the model was not able to capture that?
So I think that the model was not able to capture it in that specific case because it was a longer period of time. We only had data for 10 days. So we had a continued happening of nights. Like every night it was kind of the same thing, but days when we're not in the room, so the pattern was flat, it was only once. So as I mentioned during the presentation, if we had data, for example, like for an year, we could have surely like seen the pattern following the right line.
So thanks a lot, and it's really good to see where you got to. You know, when I think it was 2 weeks ago, saw you presenting what the challenge was and what you were going to do, and on all of the challenges, you've got a huge amount done within 2 weeks, and it's really impressive. And actually, it's very difficult to pick out individual questions from that because there's just so much in there. So just starting with my first question about challenge 1. So you actually did a whole lot there, that you looked at a lot of complex data, you pulled out some correlations, you came up with an explanation on that. And I'd just like to understand how, you know, because there's a lot of different directions there, how did you go about as a team working together to actually get this?
Okay, so our team was extremely varied in our set of skills because we had like one people who could really code, and then other people that were really stronger in the science knowledge field, and so we had to really work together. And I think we started, well, as I said, we started with literature, but the next step was the hypothesis, because from the literature we had an idea of which direction we wanted to follow. And so after that, it was really 2 days of just coding and merging data sets and finding data and downloading data and cleaning the data. It was a really long process, but once we had that down, it was pretty much looking at the correlation graphs, seeing what could be an interesting, what could be an interesting correlation to explore, because we had some correlation that weren't really relevant to our work, so we had to cut them out. But then once we found the correlation that we wanted to work on, we made so many tries, we made so many graphs, and then we just took like the last 2 days to just look at every graph. We went through every graph, and we just sat together and just decided what was important and what was relevant to our work. That was our process.
Thank you very much.
You have one for challenge 2?
I can ask it. Okay. Okay, so I can ask another question for challenge 2 as well. I've just been, as I told you in the last time we met, you know, if you look around and ask who's next, then it's you, okay? So just on challenge 2, you know, again, I think at the beginning what I was really most interested about that challenge was this idea of using the human as the sensor. And you know, you've done something there, and you found out some quite interesting things. And I'd just like you to talk about, you know, the difficulties of looking at that data, and what do you think you really found? Because I think, you know, you found that people perceived air quality as carbon dioxide, and I'd just like to think through how you feel about that, and the difficulties in actually getting this into something that can be used. Somebody on challenge 2.
Okay, so for this type of analysis, so relative the questionnaire, we used data that are actually are subjective, so are different for each person. We obtain interesting results because, as you could see in the graph, the peaks were not as precise as the sensor, of course, but we noticed that there was a correlation. So our bodies are able to perceive these changes, and even if they are not precise, they are correlated in a certain way. So the difficulties maybe were to assess the level of the pollutants. For example, in the air quality case, we had to rate from 1 to 5 the air, and we had to focus on which assessment we should give to the air quality to think to represent then in the graph and to obtain interesting correlations.
And also I think that a difficulty was that we're dealing with people. So like it was really hard every time to have people doing the survey at the same time. And sometimes we also forgot, and also it could have been easier like if we were more strict on that.
Yeah, humans very rarely do as they're told. So
We can move to challenge 3. Okay, so moving to challenge 3. So you told us that these low-cost sensors are pretty useful because they are low-cost, so they can obviously improve on our understanding using a lot of them. One of the solutions that you mentioned for solving a problem about the gap filling, for example, or maybe another one, was to merge the series from different sensors. So I was wondering if the idea of the solution is the redundancy. I mean, the solution is to put out a lot of sensors, so if they have a gap, I can merge the series, or try to work on the sensor itself to fix the problem of the gap. Thank you.
It's actually a very interesting question because, of course, we could have many sensors. The issue is that that's not really our objective. The objective is to have as many sensors spread as widely as possible. So we actually want to work more on these sensors, and that was the whole idea of the challenge, to make them more efficient, to make them work better. And we managed to actually merge the sensors because they had the same sensing material and they were in the exact same location. They were in the same place. If there had been like 10, 15, 20 meters even between them, we couldn't have merged the two data sets. It would have been a bit harder, and also there would have been slightly different conditions, like anything can matter in these cases. So yeah, I would say that the idea is to work more on the sensor, to improve the model, to predict the data. So that's it.
Other questions for challenge number 3?
So, I guess I have a question on this. So calibration is messy, and looking at the data is messy, and so on. And I have a question. You know, why do you believe the calibrations? How did you go about sort of convincing yourselves that they were good enough? So.
So there are about 27 different parameters that go into determining whether or not a sensor is good or enough. And when it comes to the low-cost sensors, the most difficult parameter is stability, which means that over time, the stability and reliability change. So the same concentration of a gas on one day versus that concentration of a gas on another day might produce a different sensor response. And that's what I meant when I was talking about the fluctuating rates of change. So when it came to convincing ourselves that it was correct, the most important thing was looking at the same concentration of gas across different time periods and ensuring that they were actually being reported as the same concentration of gas. So once we fit it to the random forest correlation model and we figured out how to calibrate that fluctuating rate of change and how to adjust for the fact that the sensor drifted through time, that's, I think, the most convincing thing when it comes to whether or not the sensor is reliable, because you know that even if it's contradicting another data set, it's at least not contradicting itself.
Thank you.
Good. So moving to challenge 4. I'll go with the first question, okay? Okay, a pretty easy one. Is that dashboard open? I mean, anyone can use it and consult the data, or by now it's just a prototype and it's on, I don't know, FBK channels or something like that? Thank you.
Right now, there's an online version, but isn't as a demo. So people can look at that. Maybe we can share the link. The dashboard will be moved on an actual server to be used from the researcher, and the demo will be replace the actual page online. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, still regarding like challenge 4. So the resolution, so how many times is the data updated? So when it's going to be updated? Every hour, I mean, yeah.
The caching system is working on the queries. So a query is basically, I don't know if maybe IT stuff are complicated for someone. The query is the request to the server for the data. This request is stored locally to be accessed faster, and the dashboard can load the data faster. But they are stored, for example, the 6-month query is stored for 7 days, but you have to have the dashboard opened for 7 days. If you close the dashboard and you reload, things change. Other times, maybe the last hour is for 5 minutes. The last month is for a day, yeah. There are some, I don't remember every time slice, but there are some times to.
Or we can move to the cross-challenge.
I just think I want to say, you know, doing a live demonstration is very brave. They often go wrong. So that's my comment on that.
So I have a cross-challenge question. It's about number 4 and number 3. You will get it. So in the dashboard, you showed us a comparison between the APA data from APA and the sensor, and there were no gaps there, no problems at all with the sensor. So I was asking myself if there is already a data cleaning process behind the scene working, maybe the one coming from the other challenge, or it is just a case and these days everything is working perfectly. Thanks. Lucky you in that case.
On the dashboard, we are trying to show all the things that actually works well. So there are some issues if you go on other months. We showed April, I think. Yeah, you can see that there are times in which the correlation isn't so good. So it depends on the period of time that you see on the dashboard.
So on the dashboard there is the raw data from the sensor, no data cleaning before uploading on the dashboard.
Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that because I'm from the front-end development, so maybe, I don't know, someone who did the back-end can help.
No worries, guys. No worries. Okay, we're gonna find out. No problem at all. Okay, there was another cross-challenge question, or am I wrong?
Yeah, you basically all work with data coming from different sources. So I guess different resolution, different units. So how was that to tackle with that challenge? So like, how did you harmonize your data, or without going into any too technical detail?
Okay. I'll try to explain the best way.
Yes, thanks.
So if I got the question right, we had, for example, the data set from FBK that was, for example, +0 time zone. And the data set from APA station was actually +2 hours time zone. So the Python programming language provides some methods in order to convert automatically while merging the data set. So this was only the problem, how can I say, it was just figuring out if the data set contains this difference of time zone, but we could have, we solved it by just merging the two data sets and then converting using a function. This was your question? Did I answer right, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it was more in general. So
okay.
you surveyed it up. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I had to collect and merge most of the data from challenge 1. And I can say that there was absolutely no interoperability among any data set. Every data set had different units of measurement, different time periods, different way of downloading it. And that's the reason why it took us almost 2.5 days to collect all the data and merge the data sets.
Yeah. So what did you learn from this kind of process?
Well, of course, we learned that interoperability is very important and can help researchers' life a lot.
Thank you.
You learned the hard way, but this is real research. I mean, also for us, every day.
Great, yeah. So also on a question between the challenges and so on, so you worked basically as 4 different teams, but I'd like, were there any examples of the teams working together on something that you'd like to give as an example to help solve something or to help each other out with something?
In my case, challenge number 1 and challenge number 2 were strictly related also because our tutors were the same. For example, when I took data from Metro Trentino to pass it as parameters to the machine learning model, I asked challenge number 1 because they already done the process of cleaning it and everything because it was really a mess. And they helped me to clean it and get it right to pass it to the machine learning model. So
I think that's a good example because you know that things like that are mechanical items, and if you can help other people out, that's to everyone's benefit.
Also, when we did the part of data cleaning, we basically just help each other. Like, for example, our team focused more on the FBK data cleaning part, while, for example, challenge 1 or 2 focused more on the APA data cleaning. And so we basically clean all the data and then share it between the 4 challenges so that we could do better teamwork.
In our case, we was challenge number 4, and we worked in 2 sub-teams. So 3 of us were working on the dashboard side of the project. Instead, the other 2, we were working on the Frost server side of the project.
That's good to see. It's good to see also, you know, that of course you're divided up for the challenge, which is obvious, but it's also good to see that you just stepped in and really stepped up to make things more efficient for everybody. So I think that's... Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I was just wondering if maybe there are questions from abroad. So let me just check the Meet if any of our guests has any questions. I don't see raised hand. Yes. So, Sandy, please go for it. You're now muted, so I think. No, you're not. No, we are not hearing you right now, Sandy. Sorry for that.
Maybe she can type the question. Then
if you would like to type the question in the chat, we can just...
In the meantime, before going ahead with this discussion, I invite here Viviana Sbardella. She is head of the education department of the local government. So thank you very much to be here, and please.
Thank you for having invited me here. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really impressed by what I have seen in this afternoon. I think these young students, boys and girls, you've been great. I really I did not believe it was going to be so interesting, and I think you did a good job. Obviously, we have to thank all the people, Claudia and everybody else, that took part to this project. But I really think this is very important for students to have these experiences. It is difficult to do something like this in school, at school. Everybody, all of you are attending school, and having experiences where you actually do take part to a research project and you do everything you have presented to us during the afternoon is not usual. It's not easy to do this, so I'm really thankful to Foundation FBK that has been proposing this for many years to our students, because I think that really this makes the difference in your learning process. I think all of you are different from what you were 3 weeks ago before. Is that right? I think they are nodding. I think they agree. So, very good. I just wanted to thank everybody. Thank you that boys and girls that you decided to use 3 weeks of your summertime to devote to this project, and thank you everybody. And well, I think that now we're going on and have a nice summer. I will think everybody now needs to go on towards summer. So have a nice summer. Enjoy yourself. Thank you.
So we try to go ahead if some of you have some questions or curiosity, and in the meantime I think we receive the question from US.
Yes, thanks Sandy for your question. The question is, I would like to ask, how many students will become scientists and engineers? Well, according to our statistics and our tracking of alumni of WebValley since 2001, it's 23 years now, many of them are pursuing a career in science, and many of them have also reached very remarkable position, either in industry or in academia or even at school. And so I think that, we are somehow we are happy to think that we have been part of their decision or moving toward research on one side or the other. So, well, this is one of the motivations that keep us pushing on with this experience, and I think that every year we are meeting more and more bright kids willing to learn and very skilled, so we are even more than happy to go on with this experience. It's a hard part of our work, okay, because it takes time, it takes a big effort, but satisfaction in a moment like that at the end of each WebValley, it's our reward. So thank you again, kids, for everything you have done also in these 3 weeks.
Today is a big pleasure because in this room we have many alumni, so maybe raise your hand, and we have also the founder of WebValley, so Cesare Furlanello. So for me it's really a big pleasure because here is really the story that, go ahead, but so we wish to be here also next year to have new participant, new project, and to offer to you other experience like this year. Okay? So I don't know if some of you would like to add some conclusion, comment, questions. We are here. Otherwise, we go to have a beer or something together after these 3 weeks. So. So. Thank you very much. You were really an excellent team, okay? And thank you for all the tutor and all the guests and all the teachers that have brought us this really brilliant students. Thank you very much. And thank you.